I own 3 properties. 2 of them are short-term rentals listed on Airbnb, and the third is my primary home in Montreal, where I live most of the year. The place where this happened is one of my rentals, a small house tucked deep in the woods near Wakefield, Quebec. It's advertised exactly as it is: quiet, secluded, cozy, a 2-bedroom cabin surrounded by trees, meant more for couples than large groups. Most of my guests are respectful, especially couples. They clean up after themselves, leave the place in decent shape, and I can usually rely on my cleaning lady to handle everything between stays. The only time I ever really worry is after bigger groups for people or more. Those are the stays where things get broken, stolen, or simply trashed. After those bookings, I usually drive up myself to inspect the place and clean it personally. It's about a 2-hour drive, and when I do go, I almost always stay the night. This visit was after one of those larger weekend groups. Before heading up, I texted my nearest neighbor. He owns the closest property, but like me, he's rarely there. We keep each other in the loop whenever one of us is heading up, mostly to check on things or grab mail. He texted back quickly, saying he wouldn't be there that week, and asked if I could check his mailbox for something specific. When I arrived in Wakefield, the first stop I made was his place. As I pulled into his driveway and walked toward the mailbox, something caught my eye. Immediately, footprints in the snow running along the side of his house. Before investigating, I checked the mailbox. Nothing important, just junk mail. I texted him to let him know. Then I mentioned the footprints. I told him they weren't from the mail carrier. They came from the woods, walked up to one of his windows, and then circled toward the back of the house. He called me right away and asked me to follow them. I did. The footprints wrapped completely around his house before disappearing back into the forest on the opposite side. When I told him, he shrugged it off over the phone. As long as no one broke in, he didn't care. That should have been the end of it. I drove the remaining minute up the hill to my own rental. The moment I stepped out of my car, I felt it that cold. Sinking awareness you get before your brain fully understands why. There were footprints everywhere. Around the house, near the windows, along the sides. The previous guests had left days ago, and it had snowed the day before I arrived. Their footprints should have been filled in. These weren't. Snow was supposed to fall again overnight, which meant if someone had been here recently, their tracks would be erased by morning. The first thing I did was change the security lock on the front door. Inside, the house was a mess. Dirty dishes piled in the sink, garbage overflowing, empty soda and beer cans scattered everywhere. Some guests treat cleaning fees like a free pass. I checked every room carefully, making sure nothing was damaged or missing. Then I started cleaning. I had music playing while I worked, but even through it, I heard something outside. The sound was faint but unmistakable. Footsteps, crunching snow. I turned the music off. The footsteps moved past the window, then toward the backyard. I checked the front door. Locked. Whoever was outside knew I was there. My car was parked out front. I sat silently in the living room for almost 20 minutes, barely breathing. Eventually, I convinced myself to look. Outside, fresh footprints circled the house again. This time, they stopped near the back right below the window air conditioning unit. From there, they overlapped and vanished. I stared into the woods, feeling watched. I didn't go outside again that afternoon. I ordered food through Grubhub, which took forever to arrive, and spent the rest of the day cleaning, doing laundry, and working remotely on my laptop. Snow began falling again, thick and steady. Perfect weather for future bookings. Around 8 p.m., I put on a movie. That's when I started hearing sounds from above. Creaking, cracking, slow, deliberate noises in the ceiling. There's no attic. The only explanation I could think of was the weight of fresh snow on the roof. Still, it didn't sound right. After the movie, I went to bed. Snowflakes tapped gently against the window, peaceful and rhythmic. For a moment, I felt calm. Then the footsteps returned, heavy, close. Passing my window, someone was outside again. I sat on the edge of my bed for 20 minutes, frozen, waiting for a door to rattle or a window to shift. Nothing happened. Eventually, I grabbed a coat, shoes, and a baseball bat and went outside. Fresh footprints. This time, they started at the air conditioning unit and led away into the woods. That's when it clicked. Someone had been on my roof. They climbed up and down using the window AC unit. I went back inside and called the police. An officer arrived about 20 minutes later. Together, we walked the property. He climbed onto the roof himself and confirmed it footprints. Disturbed snow, clear signs someone had been up there. He was calm and reassuring, told me he'd patrol the area and stay nearby overnight. I also told him about the similar footprints at my neighbor's place, just in case. He said he'd check back in the morning. A few days later, I rented the place out again. The guests reported nothing unusual. This happened over a year ago. It never happened again. But every time it snows up there, I think about the sound of footsteps above my ceiling and how close I came to never knowing who was watching me from the roof. This happened when I was a kid, back when being home alone still felt like something dangerous instead of peaceful. I was in 7th grade, and my parents had only recently started trusting me enough to leave me by myself for a few hours at night. For me, that freedom usually meant one thing: video games. Our console was set up in the basement. My dad didn't want games in the living room, so my older brother and I shared the basement space. It was a big basement, unfinished in parts, with concrete walls and that constant cold smell that never really went away. When we were younger, that place terrified us. We used to race up the stairs, slapping the light switch off and bolting like something was right behind us. By 12, I told myself I was over that fear. Still, when I was down there alone, especially at night, I'd catch myself glancing over my shoulder for no reason. That night, my parents were out doing whatever parents do, and I was home alone, sitting on the basement couch, completely focused on my game. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the console and the faint sound of wind outside. It was cloudy, snowing lightly, the kind of night where sound feels muffled. Then bang! A loud crash slammed against the basement window. I nearly jumped out of my skin. My heart was pounding as I turned slowly toward the window. For a second, I thought maybe something had fallen. An icicle, maybe. Snow was sticking to the glass, little white specks scattered across it. I tried to calm myself down. It's just ice, I thought. I turned back to the game. Bang! Another hit, louder this time. I stood up and walked closer to the window. More snow clung to the glass now. That's when it clicked. This wasn't falling ice. Someone was throwing snowballs at the window. My first thought was my brother Keith. He liked messing with me, and the idea that he came home early without telling me made sense. Annoyed more than scared, I headed upstairs toward the back door. I opened the inside door and looked through the glass of the outer door. The brick wall beside it blocked most of the backyard view, so I opened the door and stepped outside wearing nothing but slides on my feet. Cold air hit my face instantly, snow biting at my skin as I stepped down into the yard. "Keith," I called out, "why didn't you tell me you were coming home?" That's when I saw someone near the bushes by the back fence. They were crouched low, trying to stay hidden. "Keith, I see you," I said, forcing a laugh, but the longer I stared, the worse the feeling got. Something about their shape felt wrong, too tall, too still. I didn't wait to figure it out. I went back inside and locked the door. My hands were shaking as I grabbed the phone and called my mom. I asked her straight out if Keith was supposed to be home. She said no, he was staying at a friend's house. Right then, another snowball smacked into the house. My mom heard it through the phone. I told her someone was in the backyard throwing snowballs at the windows. She put me on speaker so my dad could hear. He asked if it was just kids messing around. I told him I didn't know, but I was scared. They said they were already on their way home. My mom told me not to let whoever it was know I was inside. I told her it was too late, I'd already gone outside. She paused, then told me to go to my bedroom, lock the door, turn off the lights, and wait. She said she was calling the police. I did exactly that. From my bedroom window, I could still see the backyard. The light from downstairs was still on, and I watched as the person moved closer to the house, peering through the basement windows. Then they walked to the kitchen window and knocked slowly. They weren't a kid. They were too tall, wearing a jacket with the hood pulled up. I couldn't see their face, but everything about them felt deliberate, calculated. They tried lifting the downstairs window. It didn't budge. Then they looked up toward the upstairs windows. I dropped to the floor. Seconds later, something slammed against my bedroom window. Snowballs, one after another. He must have seen me move. Then, Silence. My mom called back to tell me the police were on the way. It felt like forever before the doorbell rang. I checked carefully before opening it. A female officer stood outside, flashlight in hand. She walked the property while I stayed inside, watching through the windows. She checked the bushes, the shed, the patio. When she came back, she told me there were footprints all over the yard, but no one was there anymore. She stayed until my parents got home. Nothing ever came of it. Maybe it was a weirdo, maybe an older teenager pulling a sick prank, but the way he tried to open the window, that didn't feel like a joke. Whatever his reason was, one thing stayed with me. That night, I learned how thin the line is between being alone and being hunted.